Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Financial Empowerment, Part 2, and this is the budgeting one. So today what we're going to do is go through what a budget is, the types of budgets, a sinking and emergency fund, paying down debt, and how to build, basically how to make a budget. If you have any questions at all, feel free to um, type them in the chat, and I will get to them when I see them. So, what is a budget? A budget is a plan for where your money goes, and it's going to be personal to you. It plans for how much you spend and how much you save. When people hear the word budget, they often think that it's a restriction, but it's actually about saying, and it's not about saying no to everything. It's about telling your money where you want it to go instead of wondering where it went. So, why budget? Um, Looking here, it reduces financial stress. It helps you work towards long term goals. It can keep you from overspending. It can reveal your spending habits. It can help you prepare for any emergencies, paying down debts, or buying something fun. It gives you the clarity to control, or the clarity, ability to control, and the confidence knowing where your money is going. No matter what your income level, budgeting is about intention. And this session is about building a realistic plan, not a perfect one. So, the types of budgets that are out there are the 50-30-20, the zero-based budget, and the pay yourself first. Now, there are additional ones, but these are typically the three major ones that people tend to gravitate to. So the 50-30-20 basically takes your income and 50% of it goes towards your needs, 30% goes to your wants, and 20% goes to your savings. Now, these are typically the general numbers you can use. If need be, you can bump up the needs to be, say, 60%, and your needs could go down to, or your wants can go down to 25 and your savings can go down to 15. You can kind of work for which best kind of situation works for you. So with this example, their monthly income is $3,000. So 50% of that, or 1,500, will go towards their rent, utilities, and any loan payments. 30% goes to the wants. So, dining out, subscriptions, new telephone, that would be allocated to $900. And then that remaining $600 can go into savings. So that could go towards setting up their emergency fund. Maybe they want to go for a vacation this year, and some of it might be go towards retirement. The zero-based budget basically assigns every dollar that you make to a specific expense, leaving you with a balance of zero at the end of the month. This method requires you to anticipate all your upcoming expenses so that you can allot your income to an appropriate expense. So, using that $3,000 again, they know that rent is $1,200. They're going to be spending $400 on groceries. Utilities is going to be $150. Transportation, $200. They're paying $300 this month towards paying off some debts. $500 will be going towards their savings. Entertainment's $150, and they're going to be putting away $100 into their emergency fund, leaving them with $0 at the end of the month. And with this one, it kind of is very customizable because you know what's coming up in that next month. So you can kind of assign your money ahead of time. So there's no um, questions along the way, and or nothing strange might pop up that you were forgetting about. the pay yourself first budget. So this one is easy to understand and implement. So you basically pay yourself first um, before paying off any of your needs or your wants. It prioritizes your savings. So when you pay yourself first, your savings are your primary focus of the budget, and your expenses are taken care of after the money has been taken out for your savings. And it helps you make a steady progress towards your savings goals. So if you're saving for short or long-term goals and you find it challenging, it might be easier to set that money aside before paying off the rest of your bills. That way, you know that these goals are being taken care of. And how you set this one up is basically you figure out your take home pay. So, this is the amount you receive from your employer. It is post taxes. And so basically, you find out what your income is each month. And then you kind of determine how much you want to pay yourself. So typically, that'll usually be between 10 to 20%. So what you do is you set that 20% aside and you have it automated to send to your savings account. And then what's ever left over is what you're putting toward your expenses. So, for example, maybe 20% of what's remaining is going toward your housing, 10% of it is going towards groceries, 20 or 10% is going towards entertainment, and so forth until all your budgeted categories are covered. And then after each month, you kind of review and adjust to make sure everything's working. So maybe that first month you didn't have enough to cover your groceries, so you ended up having to pull some of that out in savings. So you kind of adjust. So instead of putting 20% aside for your savings, maybe you're dropping it down to 10% to see if that additional 10% covers you for the next month. And then you kind of reassess the following month to make until you've got a process that works best for you. Sinking and emergency funds. So we did cover this last week, but just to do a quick overview again, sinking funds are basically planned expenses that you know are coming up, but aren't as frequent as bills. It helps you avoid debt. So instead of having to put the full amount on a credit card or something, you have it saved up over the course of a couple of months. So this is typically something like a Disney Plus subscription or your car insurance if you pay it yearly. So basically how it works is if, say, your car insurance for the year is $1,200, you take that amount, you divide it by 12, and each month you're putting away $50. So that way, when the renewal comes up, you have that $1,200 ready to go to pay it off instead of having to use putting on a credit card or just putting that full amount on 1 month's budget. And so basically, a sinking fund is a strategic solving tool where money is set aside to cover specific future expenses or pay off small debts. By contributing small planned amounts over time, it allows you to fund larger anticipated costs without having to rely on a credit or draining any of your emergency funds. So even if you know you go to maybe you get your haircut once a month or once every 2 months, or get it colored every 3 months, you kind of know what that price is, and then each month you set aside a small amount of it. That way, when that 3 months is there, you have that money in your account's ready to go instead of putting it on your card and paying it off later. Emergency fund. So an emergency fund is a dedicated, easily accessible savings account containing money set aside strictly for unexpected or urgent emergencies. So maybe losing a job or having a major car repair, or there's a urgent medical need. It serves as a financial safety net to prevent taking on high interest debts or tapping into long-term investments. Having a cushion kind of provides financial peace of mind, allowing to manage surprises without jeopardizing your long-term financial health. So this is kind of set aside and only used for these specific events. Typically, they advise to having 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses in an emergency fund, and that the emergency fund is separate than any other of your fund accounts. That way, you're not accidentally going in there and grabbing money. And a good kind of first goal to hit that is having $1,000 in there first, and then you can kind of work towards getting the 3 to 6 months done later on. So let's see here, Betsy. What does Betsy say here? So I find it helpful to put some money away into pension plan through volunteering payment. If you need money, you can withdraw your volunteer portion and take it approximately 3 to 5 business days for direct. Yeah. So yeah, if you put money aside like that, it helps you out. So paying down debt. So high interest debt is typically anything that has a rate higher than 7%. So that's typically your credit cards and any personal loans or payday loans. And the reasons why you want to pay this off is basically you're spending more than something is worth. So if we look at this example, I put $6,000 on a credit card, going on, maybe I went on a vacation, put it all on the credit card. It cost me 21.2% in interest, and I make the minimal monthly payment of $124. So that $6,000 vacation, I end up having to pay $7,483 in interest, making the total cost of the trip actually $13,483 instead of that initial $6,000. Where had I put money in a savings account, knowing that this was coming down the line, I could have just paid it off without having to worry about paying off this additional interest. But situations do happen where you do end up having to put things on a credit card. And the best ways to kind of pay those off are the snowball and the avalanche method. So the snowball method is paying off smaller debts first and then moving on to the next one. So how this one works is basically you list all your debts from the smallest to largest amounts. Then you pay the minimum amount on each one, and then you kind of put additional funds available, which you would kind of determine with your budget how much you're able to put aside. And that extra money goes towards the smallest amount. And then once that smallest amount is completely paid off, you take that additional money that you spent plus the minimal payment that you were making on that account, and you put both of those towards the next largest amount until you have them all paid off. So essentially what it looks like is, with this example, I have my credit card debt at $6,000. I have a personal loan at $2,000, and then I have my student loans at $10,000. the credit card's at 21.5%, the personal loan's at 8%, and the student loan's at 13%. So my minimum payments on those are $480. So I look and I say, okay, I have an extra $100 a month that I'm able to put aside, making my total monthly payments $580. And looking at the bottom here, paying off the first loan, it would take me 11 months to pay off. Doing it this way, my credit card would take me 32 months, and my student loan would take 41 months to pay off. So the total amount of interest that I end up paying on the initial $18,000 is $5,210. If I look at doing the avalanche approach, which is similar to the snowball method, however, you basically order them from highest interest to lowest interest, and you do exactly the same thing as the snowball method, putting that extra money onto the highest one until it's paid off, and all of that money goes towards the next lowest one, and so on and so forth until they're all paid off. So with this one, because the credit card debt is the highest interest, we put it towards that first, then the student loan, then the personal loan. The total interest paid on this one ends up being a little less than the snowball method, only having to pay $5,007 in interest. And if we were to look at what it would be like if I only made the minimal payments on it without the additional $100, it would take me 99 months to pay off the credit card, 22 months to pay off the personal loan, and 53 months to pay off the student loan. So as opposed to the 31, 40, and 22. So it adds additional months, and I'm paying an extra $5,000 in interest over that time, which is money that could be put towards something else, like going on a vacation, saving for retirement, or maybe purchasing a new vehicle. So how do you set up a budget? So the quickest step, the best steps to kind of take a look at is you want to gather your bank statements, list your incomes, list your expenses, add in your financial goals, your sinking and emergency funds, choose your debt strategy, and do the math. And then once you kind of have that done, you kind of adjust and prioritize to what best suits you. And if you do choose to want to pay off your debts before hitting your financial goals, that's perfectly fine to do it before the financial goals step. So gathering your bank statements, you kind of want to try to get 3 to 6 months of worth of statements so you can kind of see what your spending habits are and kind of see what fluctuates between month to month. And while you're looking at that, you can kind of see, did this add any value to my life? Are there any areas that are kind of shocking in your spending habits? I know when I did this recently, I kind of was shocked how much I was spending eating out. Are there any patterns to what you're spending on? Maybe there's a subscription or any kind of service that you're not using. And is there anything in here that is specific that you think is a need, or if it's a want? Because if it's a want, you can see if you can kind of go without it for a little bit until, your finances are a little bit more secured in your mind. And these kind of questions will kind of help you build out your budget better. So listing your income. So this is going to be any money coming into you. So you want to know if you're being paid monthly, twice monthly, bi-weekly, weekly. You want to have an understanding of what the money is coming in each month, and if that changes, because if there's a fluctuation in each month, your budget totals will end up changing, would have to change as well month to month. And so your income can be your monthly paychecks, any freelance work, tax returns, any side hustle, any money that's coming in. You could look at it as your income. The expenses. So this is going to be the most scary part because your expenses always end up being pretty high. Um, so this list can sometimes be twice as long as your income, because obviously you get one income where your expenses can be um, daily. And this is the most important part of budgeting because it kind of shows you where your money is going and how much is going where. So a good tip for this one is kind of organizing them in categories, reviewing your monthly bank statements to see what's going out. And it's kind of a good place to see what's a bad habit and how often are you going to eat out at fast food as opposed to buying groceries at home. So your expenses can kind of be can be put into two categories: your fixed expenses and your variable expenses. Your fixed expenses are the ones that stay consistent month to month. So things like rent, insurance, subscriptions if you're doing them on a monthly basis, and loan payments. Whereas your variables might be things like gas, groceries, entertainment, dining out. Um, these are the ones that do end up changing month to month. Yeah, month to month. Oh, sorry, which is why um, having the 3 to 6 months of um, bank statements kind of show you kind of what your month, like what your averages are for your groceries and your gas. So you can kind of budget using those average amounts. Then once you kind of know what you are going to be spending in your expenses, you are going to look at it if you have any kind of financial goals that you kind of want to include in the budget that you want to save up for. Um, are there any kind of costs that you know are coming down the line? Um, maybe you want to start saving up for Christmas gifts now, so you can put a small amount aside each month till Christmas, or any of the other holidays, and then how much do you kind of want to set aside for your emergency fund? Even putting like $10 a month until you've got $1,000 set up is fine as well. And then you can kind of use that thousand as your cushion and then continue to build up as you go. Then if you do end up having any debt, or any credit card debt that you need to pay off, you can kind of see which method would work best for you, and kind of see how much extra do you have available that you want to be putting on to pay off that debt, and you kind of want to choose the one that's best for you. The snowball method is for those people who kind of want to stay motivated because you start off with the lower amount. So as you're paying them off, you kind of get that momentum, have seeing the amounts go down quick and the smaller accounts be paid off quicker. The avalanche method is good for if you or is better for faster long-term payoff. But it's also more for those who are more number driven because you do end up not having that as fast of a momentum as you would with the snowball method. Then once you've got that, you kind of do the math to make sure everything worked out properly. Did you end up over or under your income? If you end up over under, that's kind of when you take a look and you kind of see where you want to adjust and prioritize. So if you were over your income, where do you need to reduce, and is there anything else that you don't really need? And a bonus kind of section is always track your expenses. That way you can kind of know where everything is going. That way, when the next month comes up, you can kind of know what needs to be changed. And it's always good. Yes, it's good to put the plan in an app, but or on a spreadsheet or on a piece of paper, but without tracking it, it's just kind of a good intention. So, for an example here, um, income's $4,000 a month. Their expenses total 3,600. They are preparing to do putting $250 a month away for their sinking funds, which is going to cover their yearly car insurance, their Christmas gifts, and their vacation. They're going to set aside $100 a month for their emergency fund until they've hit their goal of $1,000. And they're going to be putting an extra $200 a month on paying off their credit cards. Now they've listed all of that. We do the math, and it turns out they're $150 over. So that's when you're going to kind of look at what you're setting your money aside to and kind of see what you don't really need. So maybe in those expenses, there was a budget for eating out. Maybe we reduce that a little bit. Maybe you don't need to go. Maybe you want to do a staycation instead of going on a vacation this year. So you kind of remove that from the budget as well. So we take those two things out, and you end up with an extra $50, which you can either put aside to maybe readjusting the eating out budget again to add $50, or maybe just put that straight onto your debt repayment. And then pretty much every month you want to start doing the budget again, kind of take and look at how everything worked out that first month and determine what that next month is going to look like. Now, no 2 months are ever going to be exactly the same. There are going to be things like birthdays and anniversaries, holidays. You might need to be getting decor gifts, your seasonal purchases, your semi-annual expenses. So, how often does your car insurance renew? Do you know if you have an oil change plan for the next month? And there might be some annual expenses that wouldn't show up every month that you're not prepared. You might not be prepared for unless you know about it and have your sinking funds done up. And how to basically stick to your budget. You always want to have everything written down. You always want to have it updated. When you're doing that, sometimes it can be a little boring. So maybe do it while putting on a movie or a TV show. Writing down your goals, so knowing what those goals are and how close you are to getting to them each month might motivate you to keep going. Taking out any of your fun money might help you out as well. And then automating everything. So if you're doing that pay yourself first method, you can always automate your bank accounts to send that money to your savings account before the moment it hits your accounts. That way, when you log and see it, you don't actually see that the amount is gone. So what I do want to share with you guys is a copy of kind of like a version of the budget that I did a long time ago. Last year. So basically, I took my expenses for the year. So I basically took my expenses for the last couple months categorize them on here. And you don't have to use an Excel sheet. You kind of use what's best for you. I just prefer to do everything on Excel, so it kind of helps me out figuring everything with calculations. So this was these two was everything that was in the statements. And then this kind of, I just categorized everything to help me out a little bit. What I did notice was each month I was spending about $150 each month at Tim Hortons, which was, kind of that's a little too much. So basically what I ended up doing was looking at my both my fixed and variable expenses. So I ended up moving back home. So my rent's only $200 a month. Um, Everything in my fixed expenses was pretty, low enough. But looking at my variables each month, I was spending close to $400 a month on eating out. Had a clothing at a little over $150, but then I was also having groceries at $1,100 a month. So that plus the eating out was kind of really eating into my budget. So each month I was actually overspending by almost $800. So, looking at everything, kind of determining what could be removed and fixed without restricting myself too much. I ended up coming up with a revised version. So, lowering the amount I'm eating out. So I give myself $100 or $120 a month. If I don't end up eating, dining out, I can kind of keep that as additional funds for the next month, or I can put it towards savings. I drastically dropped my groceries to $600 a month. And I set it as a fixed expense. That way, each month, I have $600 to spend instead of buying whenever I need it. And that ended up giving me an extra $700. So I developed what I wanted to put aside for savings. So after putting $200 extra over the minimum payments onto my credit card, paying off, putting Paramount. I didn't need Disney anymore, but setting Paramount and Apple to a sinking fund in order to pay it off once a year. I developed my savings section as well. So I gave myself a gift fund of $100 a month. That way, when someone's birthday or Christmas comes up, I have the money in an account ready to go. Putting $200 aside for a down payment on a house. Having a small fund, so basically $50 a month that I can save up for maybe, a new laptop or buying a new iPhone or something like that. I set up a vet fund as well, so that way when I end up having to take my dog to the vet, I'm not shocked at the bill when it comes. I have the money ready to go and I can pay it then and there. And then setting up my TFSA account so I can put $100 in there for retirement, and setting up an emergency fund as well. That way I don't have to pay with the credit card additionally. And basically, I did end up setting it up as a 50-30-20 rule. And then once I did that, I still ended up with $7 left over, which I can just put towards credit card payments and everything. And because I need to be very strict with myself to make sure that I'm following a budget, I did in fact have a very detailed budget to make sure I was following everything. and tracking everything, but they don't have to be that intense. What I did start off with originally, just to make sure everything worked out for me, was once I figured out though what my amounts were going to be, I put everything, um, categorized everything and put it in the budget amounts. And then I have a small notebook where once I pay for something, I mark it down in the book. And then once the month comes up, I kind of look, I put the actual amount to see if I was over or under. And when I start up the next month, I kind of look at that amount and change change the categories that need to be changed to make sure everything fits without me having to be so um, particular about everything. So that is the end of the webinar.